A Shadowverse Tale. Demon Zombies 2037. The Woman, the Sprinter and Great Palmer. Dot. 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 Blaze is a former soldier trying to survive in a world filled with zombies. He has an M4 and a CZP-07. He checks the rifle ammo in his vest, smirking at still having any at all. Then frowns, not knowing when he can find more. Damn it, 2 standard, 1 explosive incendiary and 1 mag of armor piercing. 120 shots. That's like 4 minutes or less at the range, he thinks. His unit having lost all its men at ground zero when the infection hit. A failed warp experiment having opened a portal to an all-infecting seemingly unstoppable plague. Though he has managed to survive for 5 years since civilization ended, he is starting to feel the absence of normal interactions. He walks down a vehicle-strewn road, moving smoothly as he scans the area for threats. Seeing movement, he turns, raising his gun, and freezes, seeing a red-haired woman around his own age. An odd sense of familiarity washing over him as she turns, running into a side alley. Giving chase, he rounds the corner, stopping when suddenly a heavy club appears and he ducks as it scrapes his hair. Jumping away from another swing, he puts his hands up. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he says to her. "Yeah, that's believable these days," she says, eyeing him suspiciously. He squints at her. "How have you survived so long?" "I did have a group, but," she starts to say. Just then a mutated zombie rounds the corner a few blocks away, knocking into a trash can. Blaze pushes the woman down behind a car as the fit-looking decaying corpse looks their way. 1.5 seconds later, the suspension of a nearby SUV protests as the zombie lands on the hood, covering 400 feet at around 180 miles per hour with ease. Blaze holds his finger to his lips, his eyes wide with fear as the undead Sprinter shifts its weight, looking around. The SUV's suspension groaning and creaking. The creature sniffing the air, listening for the tiniest sound. After what feels like an eternity, the creature wanders off lazily. Slowly peering from behind the car, he looks around. Seeing no sign of the creature, he turns to the woman. "Looks clear, calm," he starts to say, but is interrupted as he spots a blur and dodges a clawed hand. Tensing against the coming tackle, he is sent tumbling toward the front of the car, falling back with the force, jumping away from another swipe. He rolls twice and tries to regain his footing, ending up on his back. Raising the rifle, the shots find empty air in the car's rear panel as the creature darts behind it. Moving as something catches his eye, the Sprinter having circled around out of sight. A claw swipes by his neck, missing by a hair, and he tumbles to the ground. Recovering, it lets out a horrific roar, snake-like scream as its head explodes. The red-haired woman lowers her stockless short-barrel shotgun and looks at him. "That thing just called a dozen more within 20 miles, we need to get moving." Blaze looks at her. "How do you?" he says as she pulls him into a sprint. "How do you know that?" he asks as they run down an alley littered with trash and charred bodies. His pace quickens as the sound of zombies gets closer, then hears a crash of debris behind and turns, seeing the woman on the ground. She pushes herself up, cursing at what she tripped over. She looks back as another Sprinter bursts through a fence. Just before taking off, she is startled by something grabbing her ankle. Jumping away, she glances down to see little hands. "Please, help us," a tiny voice says from a window at ground level. Blaze looks at the opening, then back at the Sprinter as it finds its feet and turns towards them. The world slows as the fear and panic build. Raising his weapon, moving between the threat and the woman, Blaze opens fire. Dot. He squints in confusion as he watches the bullets, seeing them clearly as if they were moving at the speed of a cheetah. Dot. The Sprinter ducks under several rounds and sidesteps another as it closes in quickly. Taking a few close range hits, it slows slightly. Reaching Blaze, it lashes out with its claws and he counters, leaping forward, his knees impacting at its shoulders. Stopping the creature on the spot, pulling his P-07 mid-air, firing 2 high-powered armor penetrators at 7,000 feet per second into its brain. Landing hard as it stops moving, he rolls away to a knee. Then he glances up to see more tumbling into the alley and looks to the woman. Seeing his fear, she glares at him. "We aren't leaving them, Blaze," she says, and he nods. "Well, hurry up then, it's getting crowded," he shouts, firing a few shots. Sidestepping to his right, avoiding a spearing hand, a lunging knee strike knocking the creature into a brick wall, cracking it significantly. Before it can recover, Blaze fires his pistol into its head. As he turns leaning away, another claw swipes past. He explodes toward the threat, hitting with his padded elbow, putting it to the ground. Standing above it, he fires his rifle and it stops moving. Suddenly a foot to his chest knocks the wind out of him as he's forced violently onto his back. Its claws tearing into his vest, gripping him tightly. Looking at the sprinter, Blaze pulls his legs up, entrapping it, his boots digging into its collarbone and back, holding it out of reach as it tries to strike down at his head. Its collarbone separates from its position as it lunges again. Just as his feet slip, the woman blows away the creature with a lead slug, saving him from its armor-shredding claws. The next day, Blaze wakes from a fitful sleep. Rolling over, he sees they are in a cabin and smells pine needles. What happened? Where are the two kids we were trying to help? He asks the red-haired woman as she stands guard. We got them to safety. They're in the bedroom. They're fine, just a little shaken up. You should get some rest too, she answers, her gaze not leaving the window. The name's Larissa, by the way. Thanks for not abandoning us in that alleyway, she says, glancing his way. He sits up and nods to her as he listens. Good to know. I'm Blaze. Nice to meet you, he says, shaking her hand firmly. I'm gonna get some water. You need anything? He asks her, standing and stretching. She shakes her head, still watching out the window. No, I'm good, thanks, though. As he crosses the room, he sees a worn journal on the table. Curious, he picks it up and begins to read. It is filled with drawings and stories about the zombie apocalypse written by the two children. He smiles. Their names are Lilith and Johnny. He thinks as it breaks his heart knowing what they've been through. Larissa clears her throat. Their parents were okay till recently. If we hadn't shown up, they would have been eaten by them for sure. Was barely able to pull them out before the mutated parents broke down the door. Without you there we wouldn't have made it. He looks over at her, eyes wet. I'm just glad we were able to help. A month later, as they rest in a random house for the day, Larissa flinches as suddenly the room is filled with light. Looking up, Blaze is shocked to see a mass of melted-looking zombies fused together, ripping away the roof of the enclosed porch. Selecting full auto on his suppressed rifle as Larissa runs to get the children away from danger. He raises his gun, firing a 12 and 15-foot mutation, his bullets having no effect. Falling back to the ground with explosive incendiary rounds into his rifle. His bullets hit the mutant hard, blowing chunks out of the creature, but it still keeps coming. Ducking under a couch-sized fist, he rolls back into a hallway with a window at the end. In halfway slow, the large creature. Screeching in rage, the creature puts out a palm as if reaching towards him. As he watches, the zombie-like creature materializes around human bones, peeling off the palm with a sickening feel of flesh. The man-sized creature twitches and begins moving awkwardly forward, its appearance that of a skinned human. The larger threat backs away from the hallway as the palmer screeches, taking a few unbalanced, shaky steps, each step more stable than the last. Blaze swings his rifle like a baseball bat, hitting the creature in the head, causing it to stumble back, but loses his weapon as the zombie knocks it away. Throwing a hard punch, his metal-knuckled gloves crack the creature's skull, dropping it to a knee, then drawing his pistol, firing it twice, it falls back. Grabbing his rifle, he escapes through the window with Larissa and the children. He looks back, the larger zombie calmly grabbing the dead palmer, its melty flesh covering it. Further down the road, Blaze moves behind Larissa and the children as a zombie bursts through a side window and begins crawling quickly towards them. Reloading his rifle with armor-piercing ammo, he takes aim. Last mag, 30 AP plus 1 incendiary. He thinks, breathing shakily. Going for the creature's head, he sees the scars from the last encounter with the same zombie just a moment before. Firing at the creature, the exploding incendiary flashes centered on its forehead, the armor-piercing round finding its eye as both fail to penetrate, though it drops to the street, stunned a moment. Standing up on its legs, it shakes its head, a substance secreting into the damaged areas, hardening over its forehead, but in its socket it turns to a fleshy eye that seems to follow the gun barrel, staring intently. Cocking his head, he frowns. That's so cool but so not fair, he says as it charges. He keeps his gun on semi-auto, the 18 rounds only causing flesh wounds as he goes for its chest and head. The creature, perceptive enough to purposefully take hits in thicker parts of its skull. The hardened bones resisting the projectiles, though body shots deal some damage. Aiming centered on the chest, he fires one more and it tumbles to the ground twitching. He holds fire, cursing in his mind. Shit, 10 shots left. At least they need a spine to move. The Palmer stands wobbling slightly. Blaze squints. Of course it was temporary, he thinks. The creature then rushes forward more steady than before. Blaze slips past a clawed swipe and pulls his knife, stabbing at its temple. The blade tip penetrates but snaps, leaving 2 inches embedded in the zombie's head. Then, dodging a few more easily, he throws a multi-punch assault on its chin and face, dazing it. Spinning into a side-kicking knock, it into a nearby car, backing off as it recovers quickly. Blaze suddenly draws his rifle up, firing 2 more rounds, snapping its head back, and he closes the gap. Jumping knees first, he impacts its chest, only to be knocked away. Landing hard on his feet, he slips by a clawed foot that rockets past his head as he knocks it away and strikes out, only for the zombie to sloppily dodge and block every strike. Suddenly Larissa appears, pointing her shotgun at the creature, a lead slug slamming into its head. Blaze immediately knocks the stunned creature to the ground, landing on its arms, pinning it. Swinging his rifle butt, it shatters the creature's face. He brings the rifle down on the knife shard, driving it in slightly further. The creature looks up at him and he puts the barrel of his rifle into its eye socket, pulling the trigger. Multiple armor-piercing rounds punching through to its brain, killing it again. Rolling off the zombie, he grabs the children and looks back to the house, the hulking zombie moving slowly towards its fallen spawn. Rounding a corner, they lose sight of it. After running for a few hours, Blaze slows, ducking inside a solid, defendable house. Lilith and Johnny huddle close to Larissa as he clears the few rooms and finds no threats inside. Stopping in the middle of the main room, he sighs, then whispers, "Seems we lost them. Stay alert though," he says. Then sprays the last of his military-issue scent masking substance. "Now that we know Big and Ugly is out there with an upgradable zombie spawn, might as well use it now. What's it do anyway? Reinforce whatever it finds damaged. Hope it has a limit to how tough it can grow," he thinks as Larissa covers the children in their fluffy cot nearby, then moves over to him. He wraps an arm around her as she cuddles up to him. "Blaze, please don't leave us," she says. He shakes his head. "Only thing to keep me away is you leaving, or death," he says, kissing her forehead. "I don't care if a million zombies are in my way, and I could never hate you to be able to leave. It would just hurt more, and if it's a problem we can work through it together. Zombie or human problems." She holds him tighter as the night falls. The sounds outside keeping Blaze awake as he keeps watch, Jane having tuned out the sounds. Her sense of safety with him helping her tune out the noise. The children having the military-grade sound-canceling earmuffs. As he focuses on keeping watch, hissing screeches mixed with gurgling or choked, lion-like mutated human screams and wails fill the night. Just then a crying accompanied by a hiss-like sound moves along the wall behind him. Listening closely, he squints as the crying stops. He shakes Jane lightly and she lifts up to look at him just as a bone-like spear pierces his shoulder and through the spot her head was in. The spear is pulled back through the wall and he rolls away. He looks at Larissa. "If that thing calls the others, we won't be able to protect them," he says in her mind in a fraction of a second. Then is already to the side door. The creature beginning to start its calling wail, he vanishes through the doorway. There's a yelp from a hard impact outside and the sound of a struggle, a quiet gurgled squeaky growl barely heard through the wall above the other sounds in the night. Larissa clinches, shrinking into herself as there's a house-shaking thump against the wall. There's a grunt of effort, then 2 bone spears pierce through it covered in blood. A struggle that fades with a sickening mushy sound. "Blaze," she whispers breathlessly. ... Trembling she watches the door, raising her gun as tears fill her eyes. Seeing movement she starts to squeeze the trigger but stops, relief washing over her as Blaze shuts the door behind him. Rushing over she grabs him in a hug. Eyeing his wounds she takes him to the living room, grabbing a well-stocked first aid kit along the way. "You're lucky we are immune to whatever caused this," she says as she starts tending to him. He looks over at the children and smiles despite his injuries. Dot. Dot. The next day as they leave the house behind, Larissa looks at the creature pinned to the wall. The head, overgrown with a hardened substance. Its eyes filled in completely. Its front covered with 3-foot spikes. The skin resembling tiny palm-sized scales. A spike through the top of its mouth, one through each side of its chest in such a way as to pin it down. Blaze frowns as the creature twitches trying to look at them, its brain partially damaged. That's actually the one that took the incendiary and solid core AP rounds. I don't like that and I don't even want to know what it looks like next. Or where its big brother is. Still probably hours away with how slow it was. He sighs. Larissa nods. Yeah, we should move fast then, right? She says, pointing at an electric car nearby. Blaze grins a little. Well, if it can be charged somehow and is quiet enough. He says as they move to investigate. Dot. Dot. Dot.